Can you roll a little bit closer? One in the gallery this morning, once the testimony has started, if you step out, you're to remain outside until the witness has finished being examined. Everyone can be seated. Good morning, members of the jury.
Good morning.
I hope you had a restful weekend. We are going to pick back up where we left off on Friday with the examination of Mr. Rivera. Mr. Rauschbaum, you may cross-examine when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Morning.
Good morning.
Before we get into your testimony, I want to clarify one thing. You didn't extort Charlie Adelson, right?
No.
One moment. Veronica, are you having problems still hearing? All right. If you can assist him. Mr. Rivera, make sure you speak as loudly as you can,
right.
sir.
Get much closer.
Thank you.
And the answer to that question was no, right?
No.
You were paid $37,000 in your role in the murder of Professor Markell, right?
Yes.
You were supposed to be paid $35,000.
Yes.
Sigfredo Garcia, the shooter, gave you an extra $2,000, right?
Yes.
Your understanding was that the total payment was $100,000, correct?
Yes.
And that it was a one-time payment.
Yes, sir.
And you were told that you, Sigfredo, and Katie were hired by a lady to do a murder for hire, right?
No. If I was told by the lady,
No, I'm sorry. Let me slow down. You were told by Sigfredo that all of you were hired by a lady to do the murder, right?
yeah.
That you were doing it so that she could get her kids back.
Yes, sir.
And all of your information came from Sigfredo Garcia and Katie, correct?
Sigfredo, yes, sir.
Okay. And all of Sigfredo's information, to your knowledge, came from Katie, right?
Yes, sir.
Everything you knew about the murder plot came from Sigfredo.
Yes, sir.
According to you, Katie was the mastermind.
Yes, sir.
She was the one, as you've said, running the shots.
Yes, sir.
Anything that Sigfredo or you did in connection with the murder had to be cleared through Katie, correct?
Yes, sir.
And Sigfredo and Katie lied to you about a lot of things about this murder, right?
Lied about what?
Well, let's go through it. For starters, during the first trip in early June, Sigfredo told you that you were going to do a robbery, right?
Yes, sir.
Not until on the way up did you find out that you were going to do a murder.
Yes, sir.
Before the July trip, you didn't want to go, right?
Yes, sir.
And to convince you, Sigfredo again told you that you were just going there to scope things out.
Yes, sir.
During the second trip, the day before the murder, you drove by Professor Markel's house. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And you testified that at some point after you arrived at Markel's house, after noon on the 17th, you saw a woman and 2 kids walking on Trescott by the house.
Yes,
right?
sir.
And the woman looked at you as the Prius passed and immediately got on her phone.
Yes, sir.
You testified that you asked Sigfredo what was up with the lady. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And Sigfredo responded that that's her. That's the guy's wife. That's the one that wants the kids back.
Yes, sir.
You asked Sigfredo what the lady was doing there on Trescott with the kids.
Yes, sir.
And Sigfredo responded that she came there to make sure that everything was all right,
Absolutely.
meaning all right with the plan.
Yes, sir.
As you sit here now, you're aware that the woman and the kids on the street was not the same lady, right?
I don't know if that was her or not, but she looked at my car.
It's possible that Sigfredo lied to you, right?
Who knows?
Another lie that Sigfredo and strike that, Your Honor. Your understanding is that the money for the murder would be paid by the lady, right?
Yes, sir.
Again, your understanding came from Sigfredo.
Yes, sir.
You didn't go with Katie to get the money, right?
No.
So you don't know where she got it from,
Nope.
and you don't know what happened when she got it.
Nope.
Sigfredo never told you that he and Katie got more than $100,000 the night of the murder, did he?
Nope.
That would make sense why you got an extra $2,000, right?
Maybe.
And Katie never told you that they got more than $100,000 the night of the murder, right?
Nope.
Sigfredo never told you that he and Katie were getting paid every month after the murder, right?
Never knew nothing about that.
You didn't know that they were getting paid $3,000 a month.
No.
You didn't know that they were getting paid $1,000 in Adelson Institute checks, did you?
Nope.
But you saw that Sigfredo was spending a lot of money, right?
Yes.
You saw that Sigfredo even told you that he had paid for Katie's breast augmentation surgery, right? Her breast surgery?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. If he told me about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He told you he paid for it, right?
That's what he said.
You didn't know that Katie was getting money from Charlie Adelson every month in an extortion plot, did you?
No.
In May of 2015, you get arrested on a federal RICO case, right?
Yes, sir.
And you were detained.
Yes, sir.
And you wanted to get out of prison, right? You wanted to get a bail.
Yeah.
You started thinking about the fact that Katie and Sigfredo seemed to be spending a lot of money, right?
No.
Okay. So let's briefly recap all the lies that they told you. Not that you made, but that they told you. They lied to you about the purpose of the trip going to Tallahassee, right?
Yeah.
They lied to you about who the lady was on the street.
Yeah.
They lied to you about the amount of money they received.
Yeah.
They lied to you about getting money every month.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it possible that they lied to you about the purpose of the job to begin with?
They don't even got the money. Where they gonna get the money from?
Isn't it possible that you thought it was a murder for hire, but it was really an extortion?
Extortion to who?
Charlie Adelson, not from you, but from them.
Okay.
Isn't it possible?
I don't know.
By the way, on Friday, you testified that you just wanted to rob the lady, right?
Yes, sir.
But Sigfredo was adamant. We can't rob the lady. We got to do the murder.
Yes, sir.
Isn't that because he wanted to keep on getting money every month?
I don't know.
But you would have just robbed him, right?
Yep.
Would have been a lot easier, right?
Real quick.
Would have been a one-time payment, right?
That's it.
Couldn't have gotten paid over time, though, right?
I don't know.
Well, if you rob someone, it's hard to keep robbing them over and over and over again.
Absolutely,
Right?
of course.
All right, so I want to back up a little bit, and I thank you for your honesty there. You've never met Charlie Adelson, correct?
Nope.
You've never seen him before this case.
Nope.
You've never spoken to him by phone.
Never.
And you've never communicated with him in any way.
Never.
You've never met Donna or Harvey Adelson.
Nobody.
You never spoken to them by phone.
I didn't meet nobody.
And the same goes with Wendy Adelson, correct?
Nobody.
You know Sigfredo your whole life.
Yes, sir.
You're like brothers.
Yes, sir.
You've known Katie since she and Sigfredo started dating when they were teenagers.
Yes, sir.
You considered them to be married.
Yes, sir.
Sigfredo was deeply in love with Katie, right?
Absolutely.
He would do, as you've said, anything for her, right?
Anything.
He was, as you said, blind over her, right?
Yes, sir.
Katie treated him badly.
Yes.
She messed up his head, as you've said, right?
Yes, sir.
At some point, you learned from Sigfredo that Katie was having a relationship with someone she worked with, right?
Yes, sir.
Sigfredo told you that Katie was cheating on him with someone called the dentist.
Yes, sir.
According to what Sigfredo told you, Katie was sleeping with the dentist at the same time she was sleeping with Sigfredo, right?
Yes, sir.
So Sigfredo knew that Katie was cheating on him,
Yes, sir.
and he wasn't too happy about it, right?
Nope.
Sigfredo told you that the dentist had money. Let me rephrase. Sigfredo told you that Katie told him the person she was with was rich.
No.
Well, he told you that Katie would flaunt and show off to Sigfredo that the person she was dating with had money, right?
I don't think so.
Sigfredo was devastated when he learned about Katie's new relationship.
Yeah, anybody will, right?
I agree. Sigfredo started drinking too much.
Every day.
He started doing drugs.
Yes, sir.
He was acting crazy and unstable.
Yes, sir.
He couldn't keep a job. In fact, you had to fire him from a job, help get him fired from a job, right?
Yes, sir.
Because he was drinking even while at work.
Yes, sir.
And he was fighting a lot.
Yes, sir.
Katie told Sigfredo that she would only take him back if he did this job for her, right?
Yeah.
Now, before Sigfredo was fired from his job, I want to take you to March 14th of 2014. Okay? I'll refresh your memory about it.
Let's
Okay.
go.
There was a day when you were driving home from work and Sigfredo was driving you and you took a detour to a restaurant on Miami Beach. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
And you and Sigfredo were in Sigfredo's truck, a Dodge Ram.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sigfredo had been drinking
Every day.
and you were supposed to be headed home, but Sigfredo drove you to the restaurant.
Yes, sir.
You parked near the restaurant and you could see people sitting at tables eating outside. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And one of those people eating at the restaurant was Katie.
Yes, sir.
She was with 3 other people.
I remember that.
Do you remember they were all white?
I don't remember.
Okay. Sigfredo pointed Katie out to you and said that one of the people there was the dentist. Do you
Yes,
recall
sir.
that? And while you were sitting in Sigfredo's truck watching Katie and the dentist, Sigfredo told you he was going to run him over when they got up, right?
Yes, sir.
And what did you tell him in response?
I ain't gonna do it. I'm gonna get off the truck.
But he was serious.
Yes, sir.
That's what he was like, right? He was angry.
He was a good man. But anybody get angry if your wife is doing another man.
He was angry. He wanted to hurt the dentist, right?
Yeah.
Are you aware that he actually did try to run him off the road a couple months later in July 1st, 2014? Did he ever tell you about that incident with a jet ski?
No.
May I have one moment, Your Honor? Now, let me take you a little bit back to the first trip, okay? First trip to Tallahassee. Sigfredo came to your house and said he had a job in Tallahassee and asked you to go with him, right?
Yeah. Yes.
He told you that if you took a ride with him, that he would give you around $35,000, right?
I don't remember.
Okay. He didn't initially tell you what the job was, right?
Nope.
He rented the car and he picked you up, right?
Yes, sir.
At some point during the trip, he told you that it was not going to be for a robbery, but for a murder, right?
Yes, sir.
He told you that they were going to kill someone because there was a lady who wanted custody of her kids back, right?
Yes, sir.
You didn't know anything about the person that you and Sigfredo were supposed to kill, right?
I didn't know none of these people.
The only thing you saw was a piece of paper that Sigfredo had with a photo and address on it, right?
Yes, sir.
And the photo looked like a headshot, right? Like from chest up.
Yes, sir.
Something you would get off the internet.
I doubt that, but wherever he got it from, he got it.
Your understanding was that Katie gave Sigfredo that piece of paper, right?
Maybe.
You and Sigfredo left for Tallahassee after midnight on June 4th, which was a Wednesday, right?
I don't remember.
Fair enough. I wouldn't remember either.
Come on, man. 9 years ago?
Well, the next day after you arrived, you got to Professor Markel's house early in the morning and waited for him to come out, right?
Yes, sir.
And you saw him leaving the house with 2 kids, and you followed him to the daycare, right?
Was this the first drive?
First drive, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you lost him, right?
Yes, sir.
And Sigfredo wanted to go back to Professor Markel's house, right?
Yes, sir.
And you refused. You didn't want to go back.
I don't remember.
You told Sigfredo you didn't want to kill a man over 2 kids.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not going to do it in front of the kids.
So you headed back to Miami.
Yeah.
And that's when you suggested doing a robbery of the lady rather than killing the guy. Right?
Absolutely.
But Sigfredo said it had to be a murder and he didn't want to rob her, right?
Yeah.
And that was odd to you.
Yes, sir.
As you previously have said, you assumed there was, quote, more to it, but you never asked Sigfredo, right?
Never asked him.
When Katie learned that the murder didn't happen on the first trip, she was upset, right?
Probably.
Now let's fast forward to July 16 to 18. And I'm not good with dates either, okay? A month or so after the first trip, Sigfredo came to you and said that you had to go back to Tallahassee, right?
Yeah.
He told you that he needed you to go back because he needed the money, right?
Yes, sir.
You told Sigfredo that you didn't want to go.
Yes, sir.
So he lied to you and told you, we're not going to do a murder, we're just going to do a lookout. We're just going to watch the guy. That's what he told you at first, right?
Yeah.
The first time you went to Tallahassee, Sigfredo rented the car for you, right?
Yes, sir.
But the second time, Sigfredo told you that you had to rent the car under your name.
Yes, sir.
Did Sigfredo tell you why he wanted you to rent the car under your name?
I never asked him questions.
Now, he actually gave you the cash to rent the car, right?
Yep.
Did he tell you what color car to rent?
No.
Did he tell you what type of car to rent?
I don't remember.
The cash he gave you was in a crumpled bunch, right?
Shit, I don't remember though.
But let me ask you this way. The cash he gave you to rent the car, it wasn't stapled.
Nah, I don't think so.
Now, you rent the car and you head up to Tallahassee, right?
Yeah.
And you arrive at around 1 a.m. on Thursday, July 17th, right?
I don't remember the time, but
Early morning.
I don't remember.
Okay.
We got there.
Gotcha. You testified earlier that you didn't want to kill Markel during the first trip because he had his kids, right?
Yes, sir.
And you told Sigfredo that during the first trip.
Yeah,
You didn't want to do it in front of the kids.
I believe so.
And we already talked a couple times about seeing the woman on the street during the second trip, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, on July 18th, the day of the murder, you saw Professor Markel with his kids.
Yes, sir.
Again, you followed them to the daycare to make sure they were dropped off.
Yes, sir.
And then you went to the gym,
Yes.
and then you followed him back to his house where he was murdered, right?
Yes, sir.
And Sigfredo was the shooter.
Yes, sir.
He wanted you to be the shooter, but you didn't want to do it.
Yes, sir.
You testified that when you and Sigfredo were on your way back to Miami, Sigfredo called Katie.
Yes, sir.
And are you aware that the state has call records which put that call at 12:30 p.m.?
I don't know the time.
Will you take my word that the call records for purposes of these questions show that that call happened at 12:30?
If you say so.
The call wasn't on speakerphone, right?
No.
And you were driving on the highway at the time, right?
Yes, sir.
With the window cracked open a bit.
I don't remember.
Fair enough. But it's your testimony that you were able to hear some of the conversation, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you think you heard Sigfredo tell Katie, it's done, right?
I heard.
You heard Sigfredo tell Katie, it's done.
Yes. He's sitting
And
next
you-
to me.
And what's that?
He's sitting right next to me.
Understand. And you think you heard Katie respond, I know.
I think. I heard her.
Okay. When you were interviewed by law enforcement, in September of 2016, right?
Yes, sir.
That was 2 years after the murder.
Yes, sir.
We're now 8 years after the murder, right?
Yes.
Your memory might have been a little bit better then. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And during that interview, you told law enforcement that you didn't hear the I know comment. Do you recall that?
No.
Nonetheless, in order for Katie to know, she would have had to be told by someone before 12:30 p.m., correct?
Yeah.
After Sigfredo hung up with Katie, he told you that you would get your money tomorrow, right?
Yes, sir.
And you were upset about that.
Yes.
You were upset because you didn't understand why the money wasn't already secured.
Absolutely.
Because when you do a murder for hire, you get paid up front.
Yes, sir.
You don't get paid over time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You don't get paid after the fact.
Yep.
The whole point of a murder for hire is you get paid, you do a killing, and then you separate.
Yes.
That's the reason for that type of crime, right?
I guess.
And in fact, you told Sigfredo that since the job was finished, you were supposed to be paid right there and then.
Yes,
Isn't that
sir.
what you told him?
Yes, sir.
Now let's talk a little bit about the payment. You got paid the next day, right?
Yep.
And Katie dropped off the money, right?
Yes, sir.
And it was stapled.
Yes, sir.
And that's the first time you had ever seen stapled money, right?
Yes.
You had never, on any of these other trips, you had never seen stapled money.
What other trips?
Well, the first trip to Tallahassee, the second trip to Tallahassee, ever in your life.
Yeah, that's the first time I ever seen stapled money.
And when you got paid, Sigfredo gave you an extra $2,000, right?
Yes, sir.
Throughout the years after, Katie and Sigfredo got back together, right?
Yeah, I was in prison already.
But you saw that they had moved to a new apartment,
Yeah.
that they had bought a new large TV.
TV.
They bought a nice TV, right, after the
No,
murder?
I was in prison.
What about before you went to prison? Did you see they bought a new large TV?
I mean, they had nice stuff.
They started to get some nice stuff, right?
Yeah.
Started to spend some money, right?
Yeah.
One last area of questions, I believe, and it'll be quick. In 2014 and 2015, during the time of these events, you were a member of the Latin Kings, right?
Yeah.
And that's a crime family, right?
It's a family, yeah.
Commits crimes, right?
I mean, every gang does.
It's a gang.
I guess that's what you want to call it. I call it a family.
In fact, you were the head of the North Miami branch of the Latin Kings, right?
Yeah.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Redirect examination.
Mr. Rivera, the defense characterized a lot of things that Garcia told you as lies. Do you know that those things were lies?
No.
So when he said, "Oh, that's the lady, she's looking at us," do you know if he really thought it was the lady or not?
No, it was the lady.
He thought it was the lady,
It
right?
was the lady.
Okay.
It was her.
All right. And how long after the murder did Garcia seem to have a lot of money? Like for years after the murder, for weeks after the murder?
Probably weeks, months.
Okay, so weeks or months he was spending money like crazy, right?
Yeah.
But after that he was broke again.
Yeah.
When you were in the car with Garcia at the restaurant where he was talking about running the dentist over,
Yes, ma'am.
what was he acting like?
I mean, he's himself. You can never tell. But he drinks a lot. He does a lot of coke. But he was frustrated.
Okay, so he was jealous,
Absolutely.
angry,
Yeah.
pissed off,
hmm
drunk,
Every day.
okay, and heartbroken, right?
Yes.
All right, what about on the trips to Tallahassee? Was he like that on those trips?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so during the trips to Tallahassee, was he talking about the dentist?
Nah, we barely spoke.
All right, so when y'all were sitting out in front of the restaurant, he was talking about the dentist, right? At that time.
Yeah.
And specifically mentioning how Katie was dating the dentist and that was upsetting him.
That's all he said. He didn't mention him too much. He's like, that's the dude she's cheating on me with.
All right. And what about on the trips to Tallahassee? Was he going on about that on the trips to Tallahassee? Did he mention on the trips to Tallahassee, like, this has something to do with the dentist, or we got to kill this guy because I'm trying to harm the dentist?
No. To harm him, he never said nothing about him.
Right. One moment, please, Your Honor. Did this murder have anything to do with the Latin Kings?
No, absolutely
Were-
not.
Were you asked to threaten anybody related to this murder? I mean, were you ever asked to threaten the dentist because you're a
No.
Latin King and he might be afraid of you?
No, I don't even know these people, man. The Latin Kings ain't got nothing to do with this.
No further
Promise you that.
Will the witness be recalled by the party?
Potentially, Your Honor.
Mr. Rivera, you may step down from there. Witness.
State calls Catherine Magdalene.
That's fine. We're able. Everyone can be seated. Yes, you may. You can be seated for now. If the jurors are good to be brought in, please bring them in. Come in, you'll need to remain standing. I will swear you in, and then you can take your seat. Okay? Witness may be seated. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
You may take your seat. Please speak loudly and clearly.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ma'am, please say your name and spell your name.
Catherine Magbanua, Katherine Magbanua.
I see that you're in jail clothes. Are you currently in custody?
Yes, ma'am.
What are you in custody for?
For murder?
Are you doing a sentence for murder?
Yes, ma'am.
You were convicted of murder?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that the murder of Dan Markell?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have a trial in your case?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you testify?
Yes, ma'am.
You testified on your own behalf.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And when you testified, were you truthful with the jury?
No, ma'am. I was not.
Did you take the same oath that you just took today in your own trial?
Yes, ma'am.
What was your defense when you were tried?
That I had nothing to do with it.
All right. That we got it right in reference to Charlie Adelson and we got it right in reference to the killers,
Yes,
but you
ma'am.
weren't in the middle.
Yes, ma'am.
Was that true?
No, ma'am. It was not.
Were you in the middle?
Yes, ma'am. I was.
And didn't you also testify in the trial in which Sigfredo Garcia was convicted of murder?
Yes, ma'am. I was.
And what was his defense?
That he had nothing to do with it.
That we got it right in reference to Charlie Adelson and we got it right in reference to the killers, but he had nothing to do with it,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Objection, Your Honor. B.
Overruled, Ms. Kellerman. Make sure you use any questions.
And was that defense truthful?
No, ma'am. It was not.
So Sigfredo Garcia was involved.
Yes, ma'am. He was.
So why tell the truth now?
I believe that the truth needed to come out now so that the family can get some type of closure.
Why didn't the truth need to come out last year or the year before or the year before that?
I was trying to defend myself.
You were trying to get off.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you think you'd be successful in your trial with that defense?
I thought so.
Has anyone promised you anything for your testimony here today?
No, ma'am.
Weren't you originally offered immunity for cooperation in this case?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
But you didn't take us up on that
No, ma'am, I didn't.
because you thought you could get off completely.
Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
And now you're doing a life sentence.
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Did Charlie Adelson threaten to harm you if you told the truth?
No, ma'am, he didn't threaten me.
Did anybody threaten you to keep your silence?
No, ma'am.
Did anybody promise you anything if you remained silent all these years?
I wasn't promised anything, but I wasn't promised anything.
Go ahead, finish your thought. You weren't promised anything, but what?
I thought everything was going to be okay.
You thought you'd be acquitted.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so did you know Dan Markell?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Did you have any personal beef with him?
No, ma'am, I did not.
What was your motivation for becoming a part of this murder plot?
Financially.
So not as a favor to Charlie Adelson?
Objection, Your Honor.
What is the objection?
I'll rephrase it, Your
Sorry.
Honor. Was it a favor to Charlie Adelson?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Okay, but your primary motivation was not favor to Charlie Adelson?
Well, yes, ma'am, it was. And financially.
All right, because you were going to get paid for
Yes.
your part?
Yes,
How much
ma'am.
did you get paid?
I don't know the exact amount.
What was your relationship to Charlie Adelson?
He was my ex-boyfriend.
When did you meet him?
I believe that was in 2013.
Do you know what month?
Has to be around September.
Can you point him out and describe what he's wearing?
He's sitting over there with a blue jacket and a blue tie.
Let the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
The record will reflect.
Show you what are marked as states 48. You recognize this exhibit?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
How do you recognize it?
That's when we went to Key West.
Is that a fair and accurate photo of you and Charlie Adelson?
Yes, ma'am, it
Is
is.
that when the two of you were taken when the two of you were dating?
Yes, ma'am.
Do Judge, at this time, I'd ask to move into evidence states 48.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
48 is admitted.
Do we have that for publication? So was this photo taken before or after the murder?
Before.
Who came up with the idea to kill Dan Markel?
Charlie.
So Sigfredo Garcia didn't come up with the idea?
No, ma'am, he did not.
Luis Rivera didn't come up with the idea?
No, ma'am, he did not.
When did the defendant first bring this idea up to you?
My first recollection was around Halloween of 2013.
Around Halloween or on the actual?
On Halloween, yes, ma'am.
All right. What's your recollection of how that came up?
We were at a Halloween party in Lincoln Road, and right before we were about to go, he got in the car with me and he asked me a question.
What was the question?
Do you know anybody that can harm someone?
And did you know anybody that could have harmed someone?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Who was that?
Sigfredo.
And at the time, what was your relationship with Sigfredo?
Wasn't the best.
But he was the father of your children, right?
Yes, ma'am, he is.
So were you dating both men at this time, or were you only dating Charlie?
No, I was only dating Charlie.
Okay. And so he meaning the defendant initially said, do you know anyone that could harm someone? Was he aware of your connection to Sigfredo Garcia when he made that statement?
Not that I know of. No, ma'am.
Did you suggest Sigfredo Garcia at that time to the defendant?
No, ma'am.
What did you say?
I just said yes and kind of left it alone.
All right. Did it go any further than that at that time?
Not that night. I don't
Did
believe
you
so.
know who he wanted harmed
Did
at that time?
no, ma'am.
All right. Had you become aware during the course of your relationship with him that he had some kind of issue going on with his sister's ex-husband?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
What did you learn about that?
He was just stating that his family wasn't, his mom and dad was stressed, and that his sister was having problems with her husband and custody of her 2 children.
And when did you learn that the person that the defendant wanted harmed was this ex-husband of the sister?
I believe later on.
All right. And when did you learn the name Dan Markel?
It wasn't until, I don't know if it was on my trial or when Sigfredo got arrested.
Okay, so even when he was killed, you didn't know the name of the person that was being killed?
Yes, I never knew his name.
How did the defendant refer to this person, if not by the name Dan or Danny Markel?
Wendy's husband.
Okay. So you knew that the person that was going to be initially harmed was Wendy's husband?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you knew that there were issues, or what did you know about the beef with him?
He painted this picture that this was a terrible man and making his family go through a lot custody-wise with his sister.
All right, and when he would say these things to you, is it in the context of his mom specifically or his family in general?
I believe it was more towards his mom.
Meaning what?
That his mom hasn't been sleeping, his mom is not eating. I know his dad wasn't the best health either, but he would refer to his mom a lot.
All right. And the reason she wasn't sleeping or eating, did that have to do with this ex-husband of Wendy?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever tell the defendant who it was that was going to be doing the job?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Why didn't you say the name Sigfredo to Charlie Adelson?
I always referred to each other as my friend. Neither one of them wanted to really hear each other's names.
And why is that?
Because Sigfredo was the father of my kids, and I was dating him at that time. I was dating Charlie at that time.
Okay, so Sigfredo Garcia, did he have strong feelings about the defendant?
Yes, he didn't like him.
All right, and is that because you were dating him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And vice versa, you're not going to talk about the child's father with the new boyfriend either?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So is it true then that you were sort of walling these two off from each other before the issue of the murder and the conspiracy ever even arose?
Yes, ma'am.
And did that pattern continue throughout the murder conspiracy?
Yes, ma'am, it did.
Do you think Charlie Adelson knew that it was your child's father that you were going to?
He might have had an idea, but he just never said it out loud.
There's one phone call between, I think it's from Sigfredo Garcia to Harvey Adelson, the father of the defendant. Do you know anything about that phone call? That was on July 1st of 2014.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you know about that phone call?
From the trial, what I remember was that Sigfredo had contacted or was trying to contact Charlie, but we were in a heated argument at that time. We were kind of in the middle of the street, and I guess it's the first thing he looked up was his work number.
All right, so you say you're in a heated argument. Is this the confrontation that occurred where you and the defendant were going jet skiing?
I believe that was after.
It was after that incident?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, how many interactions personally, face to face, did, to your knowledge, Charlie Adelson have with Sigfredo Garcia?
That was probably the only one that I remember, was that jet ski accident.
Accident?
Or like the confrontation.
All right, tell us what happened at that confrontation.
Sigfredo had just picked up the kids, and he was eating at a corner pizza place with the kids, and he saw that Charlie was coming by to go pick me up, and I guess saw the jet skis in the back of the car. So he loaded up the kids and cut us off, was screaming a couple things out loud, but we didn't really hear anything because our windows was up.
All right, did you say he cut you off? Do you mean in traffic?
In the back street of where I lived at that time.
All right, and when you say he cut you off, did he run you off the road or something else?
He kind of just went right and blocked the road in front of us, so Charlie had to kind of do a 3-point turn and go around the other way.
Did the two men actually get out into the street and confront each other?
No, ma'am, they did not.
Okay, were any actual words exchanged through the windows?
Through the windows, yes, but I had my window up, so we didn't know what Sigfredo was saying.
All right, so Sigfredo shouted some things out the window. Did Mr. Adelson do the same?
No, he did not.
And what were the things that were shouted out the window? Were you able to hear them or not?
I didn't hear anything.
All right. And at this point, this is July 1st of 2014, the plot is already underway to do this murder, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Does Sigfredo Garcia know that he's doing the murder for Charlie Adelson?
To my knowledge, he might have had an inkling about it, but I don't know. That was never spoken of.
Okay, the killers, and when I say the killers, I'm referring to Garcia and Rivera, knew they were doing something for a lady to get her kids back. Do you know how they knew that information?
I believe it's because of the envelope that Charlie gave me to pass over.
So you didn't relay that information to them, that it had to do with a lady and her kids?
I might have mentioned it to Sigfredo, yes.
Okay. So if you mentioned that to Sigfredo, would you be, I guess, were you intentionally trying to characterize this job as being related to someone other than Charlie Adelson?
I believe so, yes.
Is that because Sigfredo Garcia would not have wanted to do anything to help out Charlie Adelson?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, do you think Sigfredo knew that this lady with the kids was somehow connected to Charlie Adelson?
I believe so.
All right. And there was going to be a lot of money paid for this job, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you know anybody else with that kind of money or that might have had that kind of money to get this job for them?
No, ma'am, I did not.
All right, you mentioned the paper. Luis Rivera said there was a paper that Sigfredo had when they came to do the murder. Do you know anything about that paper?
No, ma'am, I don't.
All right. Did you provide a paper to Sigfredo Garcia?
Yes, I did.
All right, and when you say you don't know anything about it, but you gave it to him, you obviously know something about it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so tell us I know what you're trying to say is you don't know what was on the paper.
The content of it, yes.
Tell us how you got the
One
paper.
moment. Mr. Rochford. And Ms. Kappelman, please use open-ended questions.
Tell us how you came into possession of this paper that the killers had.
Okay. One day, just a random night that I was over at Charlie's house, he had a manila envelope that was sealed. He told me, Katie, do not open it. Do not touch it. Do not look inside it. I didn't print this paper out from my office, printed it probably from another office, and basically give that paper to the other person.
All right, and who is saying this?
This was Charlie.
All right, this defendant.
Yes, ma'am.
So he says to you, I have this paper. How does he give it to you?
I had a diaper bag, so he showed me the envelope, and I was like, just put it in there.
Did he express any concerns about fingerprints being on the envelope or the contents?
Yes, ma'am. He said he wore a glove so that there's no fingerprints on it. He was very specific about me not opening it and not looking inside it. And he also told me that he didn't print it from his office.
All right, and what about licking the envelope?
And that he didn't lick the envelope.
He said he did not lick the envelope?
He did not lick that.
And what was the purpose of that?
I guess his DNA.
Okay. So did you touch the envelope?
It was in my diaper bag, but I don't remember if I never opened it, but I might have touched it just to stick it inside in my diaper bag.
And did you deliver the envelope to Sigfredo Garcia?
I must have contacted Sigfredo and just told him, hey, come by the house. And then, he was kind of in and out of my life, so he'd pop up. He literally got the envelope. I was like, you have something inside that bag. And then he grabbed it, stuffed it in his pants, and left.
Okay. In regards to the June trip that the killers made, did you provide Garcia or Rivera with any money for expenses
Yes, ma'am.
associated with that trip?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And where did you get the money from to do that?
From Charlie Adelson.
Can you tell us about that? What was the context of you getting that money?
Sigfredo would just ask me, hey, I'm going to need some money. I need to go out of town. And I'm like, okay. So then I'd go to Charlie, or I'd be at Charlie's house, and I'll tell him I need some money for the expenses.
And he gave you some money?
Yes, ma'am.
About how much money, if you know?
I can't recall, but it was a couple $100s.
So this thing started back in October of 13 and doesn't get done until July of 14. Can you describe whether there's any pressure as time is going on and this thing is not getting done?
Trying to remember, like, in the beginning of the year, I don't think there was really much. I mean, he's been planting this seed in my head that this needed to get done. And I guess towards probably around June, July is when he was a little bit more adamant about this job getting done.
Okay, and when you say he, you're talking about who?
Charlie.
Did you ever have any contact with any other Adelson about this job?
No, ma'am.
In the context of you know, this needs to get done, this pressure getting put on you, is there ever a mention of the mom, Donna, or the divorce situation in the context of getting it done?
At that time, not that I could recall.
Will you publish 35, please? Is this you on the left side of the screen?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Right. And was this picture, where was this picture taken?
This was in South Beach. I believe the building that they were living at where Charlie's parents were living at.
Is that the Icon?
I don't think that was the Icon. It was somewhere in First and Ocean.
Okay, so a different residence.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and this photo, was this the first time you'd ever met Wendy, or had you already known Wendy before this photo?
I met her one time prior to this because I believe this was in Father's Day. So I met her around spring break when I had dinner with her and Jeffrey.
Okay,
Yes.
so the Yardbird restaurant?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so this was the second time you'd met her.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have a relationship with her outside of her being Charlie's sister?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Did you communicate with her by phone or through any apps or anything like that?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Did you receive any communication from her specifically about the homicide?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Did Wendy ever give you any money or other gifts?
No, ma'am, she did not.
Did anybody pay you for your part in the murder other than Charlie Adelson?
No, ma'am, they did not.
All right, and the payments from Charlie Adelson, did those include the checks that were signed by his mother from
Yes,
the Adelson
ma'am.
Institute?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Did you perform any job at the Adelson Institute?
No, ma'am, I did not.
You didn't go up there and clean on the weekends?
No, ma'am, I did not.
On the night of the murder, did you go to the defendant's house?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And where was that house, or what house was that?
That was in Whale Harbor in Fort Lauderdale.
All right, and did you get payment for the murder that night?
I believe it was the following morning.
Were you in a panic when you arrived at his house?
Was I in a panic?
In a panic.
I wasn't in a panic, but Charlie was.
Okay, explain that. How was he acting?
When I opened the door, he was kind of frantic and he had a gun in his hand and he was just all over the place.
Was that normal behavior for him?
Not having a gun in his hand, no, ma'am.
All right, did you know him to have a gun prior to that?
Yes, ma'am, he has a gun safe.
All right, but he just didn't usually carry around in his hand?
Yeah, he's never had it in his hand.
Charlie, phone off, please.
What was he saying to you when he was in this frantic state?
I can't really recall because he had given me some Xanax, so it was a little blurry that night, and I just fell asleep. I think we both fell asleep. So.
All right, can you tell the jury whether the excitement that he was showing had to do with the murder or something else?
Yes, ma'am. It had to do with that.
Okay. Was anybody else there at his residence when you arrived?
At that day, no, ma'am.
Okay. Did you ever see his parents at the residence?
No, I didn't see his parents.
How was the money packaged when you got it? I think you said you got it the next morning.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How was it packaged?
It was in a plastic. The money was in a plastic bag, like a Ziploc bag, that was inside a brown bag, and then like a grocery bag over it.
And was the money stapled?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Can you explain how it was stapled? Like what size bills and what increments were stapled together?
I believe it was stapled in I never counted it, but it was like in a stack and it was stapled in the corner.
Right, were they $100 bills or something else?
They were $100 bills and there was some 20s and 50s.
Okay. And was the money damp?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Explain what you mean to the jury.
A couple days after that, I went and I opened the bag and I called Sigfredo and I told him, I was like, there's mold on this money. And he's like, well, blow dry it. And I was like, but why would there be mold on the money? And he's just, I don't know, just blow dry it. So I believe his parents or his mom might have washed the money.
You mean like physically wash the money?
Yes, ma'am.
And why do you think his mom did it?
Because he was always adamant about telling me he didn't have any money in his house. And he told me that his parents had just stopped by right before I got there. So all of a sudden he had money to put in the trunk of my car the following morning.
Was the money, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
I'm sorry.
Was the money already sorted out and packaged when you first saw it, or was he doing that?
No,
while
it
you
was
were there?
already stacked and sorted out.
Okay. And did he have to, so he didn't have to go anywhere to get the money, he already had it when you arrived?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there any argument that night about the money or the next morning?
With me and Charlie?
Yes.
No.
Did you, I guess you did stay there that night? You may have already said that.
Yes, I fell asleep.
Was there any argument with the defendant at all about anything that night?
No, ma'am. Not that I can recall.
Did you threaten him in any way?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Judge, may we go sidebar?
Right.
You may continue with your examination.
Did you, the night that you went to get the money, did you threaten Charlie Adelson in any way?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Did you try to extort money out of him?
No, ma'am, I did not.
The money that he gave you, is that something that had already been discussed or agreed upon in reference to this homicide?
Well, I believe yes, because it was going to be payment for this.
You weren't, well, were you sent with a message from Sigfredo to tell him he better give it up or else?
No, ma'am.
Did you relay to the defendant that his family was in danger if he didn't give you whatever it was you were asking for?
No, ma'am.
How did Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera get paid for their part in this murder?
That morning, when I woke up, I was like, oh my God, I gotta go. So I drove back down, and I was trying to look for Sigfredo and having a hard time that morning. And then eventually I made it to the alleyway of where Luis's building was,
Was that on
North Miami,
yes,
in like 135th.
where he lived with Jessica?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
And I was just waiting in the car, and all of a sudden Sigfredo just like popped up and got inside the passenger seat.
All right, so they got their money from you.
Yes, ma'am. Sigfredo did.
And Rivera got paid as well, didn't he?
I believe so, yes.
All right, I want to draw your attention to what we're calling the bump. You know what we're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. After the bump and the subsequent conversations were occurring, did you have any contact with any other Adelson about the bump other than Charlie Adelson?
No, ma'am.
So you didn't talk to Wendy about it?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Didn't talk to Harvey or Donna about it?
No, ma'am, I did not.
On the Dolce Vita meeting, do you recall what meeting I'm referencing?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, was that a restaurant that you met Charlie at after the bump?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in that meeting, and the jury hasn't heard this yet, but he's saying one of two scenarios. This is one of two scenarios. Do you
Yes,
remember
ma'am.
that?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
What were the one of two scenarios? What were the two scenarios?
What he was speaking of was probably the FBI
Mhm.
or Tato blackmailing
And by
their
Tato,
family.
you mean Rivera?
Luis Rivera, yes, ma'am.
Were you concerned about that as well?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And what did you do to try to figure out who it was that had approached Donna Adelson?
I asked Sigfredo.
So he was supposed to be looking into it.
Yes, ma'am.
Were you there whenever he did whatever he did to try to find out who it was?
Was I where?
Were you present when Sigfredo, I guess, went out and talked to people about whether
No, ma'am, I was not.
Because at that time, was Rivera in custody?
Yes, ma'am. He was already doing his federal sentence, I believe.
So was the concern that maybe some of his associates might have done this?
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe he had run his mouth about it?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you reviewed what I had marked for you as State's Exhibit 111, the Dolce Vita recording with the transcript attached?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And does the transcript in that exhibit accurately reflect the words that were said at that meeting between yourself and the defendant?
Yes, ma'am.
When the defendant described the bump to you, strike. When you were speaking with Charlie Adelson and also Sigfredo Garcia about this bump, did you speak in code?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And what was the purpose of speaking in code?
Kind of just piggybacked with what Charlie was speaking to me in codes, so I kind of was like, okay, if he's talking in codes, kind of speaking codes as well.
Was the concern that the calls could be being recorded?
My concern was more that I was at work, so I really didn't want to say any phone numbers out loud or speak of what was going on.
I'm going to approach and show you what I've marked as State's Demonstrative A. Have you seen this before? I don't know if you have.
No, ma'am, I have not.
All right, and it's got several items listed here as code words with the actual meaning next to them.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you take a moment to and the ones in red are the ones used by you, the ones in yellow are used by Charlie Adelson.
Okay.
Will you review this exhibit and just tell me if it's accurate as far as what the code means?
Yes, ma'am, it's accurate.
Judge, at this time, I'd ask to make use of state's demonstrative A.
Any objection?
May I see it?
All right, Judge, I think we have an agreement with a couple redactions.
Very well. You can go ahead and make those now.
Maybe if I can borrow a Sharpie from the clerk? Yeah. Can I publish?
You may.
All right, so the first one we have is $65.70. And again, jury hasn't heard these calls yet, but when you were talking to Sigfredo Garcia about $65.70, were you referring to the undercover phone number?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Okay, and then when you're talking to Charlie about an agent, were you talking about, it seems like you're talking about real estate agent, but are you talking about the undercover agent that approached his mother?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Right, and the CD, was that reference to a recording that the Adelsons made of their contact with the undercover?
A recording of their contact with them,
Yes.
that they were being recorded?
No, that they called the undercover phone
Yes,
number
ma'am.
and recorded it.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever actually hear that recording?
No, ma'am, not until my trial.
And then the client, there's a lot of discussion about this client or this tenant. You need to find out if this is gonna be a good tenant or a bad tenant.
Yes, ma'am.
Was the tenant this person, if it really was a blackmailer, this thug that's somehow affiliated with Rivera?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, the false lead or the phishing, what did that mean? There's a lot of discussion about, I hope it's just somebody phishing. You remember that?
From the phone calls?
Yes, this is all from the phone call.
Yes, ma'am.
It was one of the two scenarios that it could be law enforcement.
Yes, ma'am. But this was Charlie basically saying this the whole time. He's the one who's coming up with all the scenarios.
Okay, but when he's talking about the scenarios, he's talking about phishing.
Yes,
He
ma'am.
doesn't say law enforcement phishing.
No, ma'am.
He says it could be, a tenant or a patient or something something like that.
Anything but what?
Judge, I'm just going to object to the leading.
Please rephrase your question.
Ms. Kappelman, sustained.
About the listing or the properties, what did that refer to?
About the paperwork. That's pretty
Like
accurate.
looking into a listing.
Yes, the listing, because I worked in a real estate agency at that time. So he was just telling me, look into the listing, oh, this will be a good investment. So it was really Charlie saying all these words.
What did the good and what might the good of can't talk. What might the good investment have been?
If he had a good lead,
If it was a blackmailer
Yes.
that you could pay off.
Yes, ma'am.
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
Overruled.
Is that correct?
yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. All right, we talked about the two scenarios. The paperwork, what was that?
That was the paper that was handed to his mom by the undercover.
On the Dolce restaurant meeting, we see Charlie Adelson pull out a piece of paper. Was
Yes,
that the actual piece of paper that was handed to his mother?
I believe so. I just never saw it. He never showed it to me.
Okay. Did he give you a phone number off of that piece of
He
paper?
did. That was that phone number that we just can't seem to get right.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
6570.
Okay. At any time after, I know we talked about the night of the money, that you got the money, but at any time after that, did you ever blackmail Charlie Adelson?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Did you ever threaten him in any way?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Did you relay any threats on behalf of Sigfredo Garcia?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Did anyone ever make you extort any money or other favors out of Charlie Adelson?
No, ma'am.
Before the murder, had you bragged to Garcia and or Rivera about my new rich boyfriend?
I didn't even know he had money like that.
Well, I mean, he had a...
I mean, he had a good job and, he had a nice house, but I wasn't aware of how, how much money he has.
Okay, but he definitely had more than Sigfredo Garcia.
Oh, yes, ma'am, he did.
Okay, and did you brag to Garcia like, oh, I got a new, better
I mean,
guy?
I'm pretty sure he saw that I was happy and I was, going out to dinners and hanging out with him, so.
Okay. But did you tell them specifically he's got a lot of money?
No, I did not.
Did you tell them specifically he's got this issue with his sister's ex-husband?
I believe I mentioned it. Yes, I
Okay.
did.
And when you talked to them about he's got this issue with his sister's ex-husband, was that in the context of hiring them to do the murder? Or just in...
Just in general.
Okay, so
just-
they were aware that he had this issue.
Well, Sigfredo was, yes.
Okay. Did you ever talk to Rivera about it?
No, I did not.
Okay. And when you talked to Sigfredo about it, did he ever say, well, I think I'll just drive to Tallahassee and kill the guy? Or anything like that?
No, ma'am, he did not.
Is that something he would have mentioned to you if that was his idea?
Sigfredo doesn't say a lot of things to me, and he likes to keep a lot of things away from me. So he would have
Okay.
never asked me that or told me that.
Okay. But in this case, I guess, okay. So is it possible that Sigfredo and Rivera came to Tallahassee and did this killing without any communication from you or Charlie Adelson, just on their own?
No, ma'am.
And then
That would be-
extorted Charlie Adelson through you to get money because they had killed the guy?
No, that'd be impossible. How would they have any information?
Well, they could have seen it on the internet.
No. I don't think so.
When you were talking about Wendy's husband and the problems with him to Sigfredo Garcia, I know you've already said this, but I just want to be crystal clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say the name Dan Markel?
No, ma'am. I never knew Dan Markel's name.
How was the name Dan Markel, the location and name of the target for this killing, provided to the killers?
I believe it was all the information that was given to Sigfredo, which I got from Charlie, was all in that paper.
Paper provided by this defendant.
Yes, ma'am. Inside the envelope.
May I have a moment to confer?
Go ahead.
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Now, you were arrested and charged with the murder of Professor Markel on October 1, 2014. I'm sorry, 2016, correct?
Yes, sir.
Almost immediately, the state talked to your lawyers and offered you full immunity, a get-out-of-jail-free card, right?
I don't know if that was immediately.
Pretty soon after you got arrested, you were offered to cooperate against Charlie Adelson and the other Adelsons, and you would get to go home to your kids, right?
Yes, sir.
And your lawyers told you about that offer.
Yes, sir, they did.
You also saw an interview on TV while you were in jail in which one of the prosecutors mentioned this immunity offer, right?
Yes, sir.
You have 2 kids who are your world, right?
Yes, sir.
If you took the state's deal, then you would have been let out of jail immediately, right? That's what your lawyers told you.
If I took their deal? Yes, sir.
But you didn't take the offer.
No, I didn't.
Instead, you stayed in jail for 3 years before your first trial, right?
Yes, sir.
You stayed in jail through COVID after your first trial hung.
Yes, sir.
You still didn't cooperate. The deal was still open, right?
Well, the deal was to give up Charlie.
And you couldn't do that.
Because in order to give up Charlie, I had to give up Sigfredo, the father of my children, so I couldn't do that.
So while you're in jail, sitting in jail, during COVID, you knew there was still a deal possibility open for you, right? You could still take a deal. Your lawyers told you that.
Before COVID, after my mistrial?
Yes.
I believe so.
And you still didn't take the deal, right?
No.
And Charlie Adelson didn't force you to take the deal, not take the deal, right?
No, I had no communication with Charlie.
He didn't pay for your attorneys.
He didn't pay for my attorneys, but there was word that my brother declined him paying for my attorneys.
Ma'am,
I had anything to do with him.
I know you have an agenda here, but just answer my questions.
Yes, sir.
Did Charlie Adelson pay for your attorneys?
No, sir, he did not.
Did anyone in the Adelson family pay for your attorneys?
No, sir.
Did anyone in the Adelson family pay any money to your kids?
No, sir.
You had nothing to do with Charlie Adelson, right? After the bump.
No, sir, I did not.
Now, the real reason you didn't cooperate, and you made it clear, is because Charlie Adelson had absolutely nothing to do with the murder of Professor Markel. Isn't that the case?
I didn't cooperate because in order to give up Charlie, I'd have to give up Sigfredo.
Well, let's talk about the testimony in your first trial. And don't worry, we're going to get to your proffers as well.
Okay.
But let's talk about the testimony in your first trial. You were asked Did you get the father of your children, Mr. Garcia, to commit a murder on behalf of Mr. Charlie Adelson? Answer, no, ma'am. Do you recall saying that?
Yes, sir.
You were asked, do you have information that Charlie Adelson was involved in this? Answer, do I have information? I don't have personal information. Do you recall that?
No, sir, I do not.
You don't recall saying that in your first trial?
No, sir, I do not.
Would you like to see a transcript of it?
Yes, I will.
I'll direct your attention to page 2800, lines 1 through 5.
Please read to yourself, ma'am.
Does that refresh your recollection that that's
Yes.
what you said?
Yes, sir, it does.
During your second trial, do you recall being asked, Charlie didn't ask you to do anything weird? Answer, no, ma'am. Like get someone to get a hitman to commit a murder of his ex-brother-in-law? No, ma'am. Do you recall those questions and that answer?
Yes, sir, I do.
Because you couldn't implicate Charlie, you went to trial, and the first trial hung. Isn't that the case?
Yes, sir.
A few weeks before your second trial, Charlie was arrested.
Yes,
Isn't
sir.
that the case?
Yes, sir.
The state waited and waited and waited for you to cooperate, and then they arrested him on the eve of your trial when you made it clear you weren't going to cooperate, right?
Yes, sir.
So you went to trial the second time, and this time you were convicted.
Yes, sir.
And you were convicted of first-degree murder and other charges, right?
Yes, sir.
A few weeks after your conviction, you were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus another 30 years. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And you were transferred from the jail in Leon County to the state prison where you would spend the rest of your life, right?
Yes, sir.
Away from your family,
Yes, sir.
away from your children.
Yes, sir.
And you realize that there are only two ways to get out of that prison, right?
What are the two ways?
Well, one way was in a coffin, right?
Yes, sir.
And the other way was cooperating against Charlie Adelson, right?
No, sir. I wanted the truth to finally come out.
What are the only two ways that you can ever get out of prison, Miss Magbanawa?
My appeal?
Oh, well, we'll get to that too. You have an appeal pending right now, right?
Yes, sir.
That claims that you're innocent.
Yes, sir.
Let's just make this clear to the jury. Miss Kappelman has called you as a witness against this man who's presumed innocent. You've just testified that you did a murder, and you have an appeal pending right now in this county claiming your innocence. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
And lo and behold, weeks after you were convicted and sentenced to life with no parole, you went in and met with the state, right?
Yes, sir.
And you met with them not once, but twice.
Yes, sir.
And you met with them for hours.
Yes, sir.
A combined total of around 6 hours, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, we're going to get into that and all the lies that Ms. Kappelman didn't go through with you that you made during those interviews, but let's go back to the first trials first, okay? In each of those trials, you took the stand for your own defense, right?
Yes, sir.
And you took the same oath and looked at different jurors the same way that you look today, right?
Yes, sir.
And in your second trial, not only did you take an oath in this room, but isn't it true that you tried to get Sigfredo to lie for you?
No, sir, I did not.
Isn't it true that you were caught on a recording in the prison in which you were going to have Sigfredo Garcia come into your trial, your second trial, and say that he did the murder with Charlie Adelson all by himself?
No, sir.
You never were on a recording of
Never
that
said
fact.
that.
Your plan at your second trial wasn't to have Sigfredo Garcia testify on your behalf?
No, sir.
Are you aware that your lawyer opened up on that plan?
No,
In her
sir, I'm not
opening?
aware. No.
Well, did you sit through the trial?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you sit through the trial when she said to the jury, you're going to hear from Sigfredo Garcia, who's going to say that the murder was between him and Charlie Adelson, and that you're just a victim of having bad taste in men?
He never came up.
He refused to come and testify, right?
I don't know if he refused. He was never called.
Are you aware that you and your lawyer subpoenaed him to come down to Leon County to testify on your behalf?
He was subpoenaed, but he just never showed up.
And he didn't
He
show
never
up?
took the stand.
Right. He was subpoenaed by you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you got on the phone with him. You were caught because you're not supposed to talk to each other, right?
Yes, sir.
But you guys talk to each other because what you do is you call his mom, right?
Yes, sir.
And he calls his mom. Isn't that what you all do?
At that time, yes, sir.
Yeah, you call each other so that you could talk to each other through the mom. And during one of those calls, you asked him to come testify on your behalf. Isn't that what you did?
No, I did not ask him.
Okay. Well, we'll move on to some other lies. During your first trial, you didn't ask Mr. Garcia to help this lady get her kids back in Tallahassee. Answer, no, ma'am. You didn't solicit him to commit a murder of Dan Markel. Answer, no, ma'am. Do you recall those questions and answers?
Yes, sir.
You were asked, well, back then, did you know someone by the name of Dan Markel? Answer, no, ma'am. In 2014, you learned that Wendy Adelson's divorce was already finalized, right? I learned that in court. I didn't know it before. Do you remember those
Yes, sir.
those words? Those were lies, right?
Yes, I lied in my trials to save myself.
We'll keep going. You lied when you said that Charlie told you that Professor Markel had been in an accident, right?
I lied that. Say it again, sir.
Well, I'll ask you the questions. Do you remember having a conversation with Charlie Adelson about his brother-in-law being in an accident? Does that sound familiar to you? It
Yeah.
sounds familiar, yeah. That was a lie, right?
No, that's what Charlie said.
He
That
told
he's-
you that he was in an accident. He'd tell you that there was a murder.
No, he told me he was in an accident.
So you didn't know about the murder of Dan Markel on July 18th. Is that what you're telling this jury?
No, not at that time.
When did you find out about the murder of Dan Markel?
It was later on.
Oh, really? So the money that you brought to the guys that Miss Kappelman brought up on opening, the money you brought up to the guys on July 19th, it was because Dan Markel was in an accident?
I didn't know that was Dan Markel. Like, I didn't know his name.
Oh.
But there was
Oh.
a murder that happened, yes.
At the March 11th dinner that you had with Mr. Lacoste at Yardbird, Dan Markel's name wasn't mentioned?
No, sir.
Would it surprise you that Mr. Lacoste has testified to the opposite of that?
No, I haven't seen his testimony.
At your first trial, you were asked, did Charlie mention anything to you about a murder out of Tallahassee? So now it's not Dan Markel. It's just a murder out of Tallahassee. And your answer was no, ma'am. Question, did he mention anything about his ex-brother-in-law being murdered? Answer, no, ma'am. Do you recall those questions?
Yes, sir.
And those were lies, right?
Yes, I told you I lied. I lied in my trials to save myself.
I understand. Please let me keep going through them. There's a lot of them, so we'll take our time.
Yes, sir.
Now, you said you never saw any cash at Charlie's place. Do you recall that at trial?
He had cash, but I didn't know how much he had. I know he keeps cash in his safe.
But I thought you just testified moments ago that you never saw cash at his place. They didn't keep cash at his place. That supposedly his parents had to bring the cash. Isn't that what you just told this jury about 18 minutes ago?
An abundance of cash.
Have you seen his safe?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever seen it open?
Yes, sir.
Doesn't he keep a lot of cash that he collects on the top of his safe?
I mean, I'm not like looking in it, but every single time we used to go out, he used to grab some money from the safe and then take it with him.
Repeatedly during both trials, you said you worked at the Adelson Institute. You never worked at the Adelson Institute,
No,
right?
sir, I did not.
Now we're going to hear about a Lexus.
Yes, sir.
You said you paid for that Lexus. You never paid for that Lexus. Isn't that
I
the case?
paid Charlie cash for that Lexus.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. I think the state might disagree. Has the state disagreed with you on that point?
About me paying him cash? Yes, because there was nothing that was coming out of my account, but I paid him cash. I had the cash on me.
During the trial, the first trial, you were asked, do you know why it is that Charlie chose you out of all of his ex-girlfriends to call? I don't know why he called me. Do you recall those questions?
Yes, sir.
That was a lie, right?
I told you I lied in my first and second trial to save myself.
Well, let's get to the second trial. Just like you're lying here to save yourself, right?
I'm not saving myself. I'm telling the truth this time.
Right, because now all of a sudden, after 8 years, you have developed a conscience. I think that's what you told the jury.
No, it's because the father of my children was on death penalty at that time on my first trial. So I couldn't give up. If it was just Charlie, like I said from the trial, go ahead and arrest him. Nobody ever did.
He didn't get the death penalty after the first trial, and he was convicted, right?
Yes, sir.
And by the time of his second trial, you had no reason to protect him anymore. He was done.
No, sir. He was under appeal.
Okay, just like you're under appeal now.
Yes, sir.
So what you said to this jury about 20 minutes ago is you said to this jury, I'm here today to tell the truth, and I want to get your exact words. Because I want to do the right thing.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it because you want to go home? And that's the only way that you could ever go home is to help them. That's the only way you can go home by not being dead.
I was not promised anything. I'm doing this solely on myself. Clearly, you don't even see my attorneys in this room.
Let's talk about the second trial. Again, you lied when you testified that you didn't know anything about or were involved in the murder of Professor Markell, right?
Yes, sir. I told you I lied in my first and second trial to save myself.
Ma'am, we've heard it. If you could just answer the questions. Did
Yes,
you
sir.
lie?
Yes, sir.
You lied when you testified that you knew nothing about Wendy Adelson's divorce.
Yes, sir.
You lied when you said you didn't pick up money from Charlie's house on July 18th.
Yes, sir.
You lied when you said you knew nothing about stapled cash.
Yes, sir.
You lied when you said you didn't bring the money to Sigfredo or Luis Rivera the next day.
Yes, sir.
You lied again when you said you worked as a personal assistant for Charlie, right?
Yes, sir.
You lied repeatedly when you tried to discuss what had happened, what was being spoken at Dolce Vita, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, now let's talk about the lies that you told that the state didn't go over with you. Let's talk about your proffers, your cooperation.
Yes, sir.
So you were interviewed by the state twice in October and November 2022, correct?
Yes, sir.
And by the way, you've met with them a couple times since then, right?
A couple times,
Have you met with them
After?
since? Yeah, after that point?
probably one time.
You met with Ms. Kappelman?
Yes, sir.
Did Ms. Kappelman ask you about our defense during that meeting?
No, sir.
She didn't ask you about whether, for the first time, whether you ever threatened
No,
Charlie
sir.
Adelson? Now, when you met with them in October and November of 2022, this was after you got your life sentence, right?
Yes, sir.
And you met with them first in Marion County Jail on October 11th, right?
Marion County Jail? No, sir. I've never been in that county.
You met with them in the jail. I got the wrong jail, obviously.
I've never met with them in any jails.
Where did you meet with them?
I
the
was
first
already in DOC
Okay.
in Lowell.
You met with them in prison.
Yes, sir.
Apologies. And the second time, you met with them at the state attorney's office, right? Here in Tallahassee.
Yes, sir.
And both times, Special Agent Sanford was there,
Yes, sir.
Investigator Jason Newland was there,
Yes, sir.
and TPD Investigator Sherry Bennett were there.
Yes, sir.
And they asked you questions.
Yes, sir.
And each time, you told them a version of events that was very different from what you said at your trials, right?
Yes, sir.
In fact, during those 6 hours of interviews, you told them about 5 more versions, right?
5 different versions of it?
Yeah.
No, sir.
Oh, so you told them the same thing throughout the 6 hours that you met with them?
I believe so, but I think the first time you can't even visit more than 2 hours, so I don't know where you're getting 6 hours.
Well, maybe I'm wrong, but let's look. The first interview started at 9:26 a.m. and it ended at 11:44 a.m., so a little over 2 hours.
Yes, sir.
First interview. Your position right now, what you're telling this jury, is that the same thing you told them in the first interview, you told them in the second interview?
I believe so, yes, sir.
You believe so or you know so?
I know so. I believe so. I believe
You
so.
absolutely know so.
No, I don't, not verbatim exactly what I said.
Isn't it true that during the entire first interview you said you had nothing to do with the murder?
No, sir, I didn't say that.
All right, well, we're going to go through exact quotes and we'll see if your memory can be refreshed.
Yes, sir.
By the way, during any of these interviews, did you give them any documentation, anything new? Any text messages, documentation, WhatsApps, any new, as people call it, receipts? Did you give them any new evidence?
No, I'm in prison. I don't have anything.
It was just your words, right?
Yes, sir.
So let's talk about what you said. During the first proffer, which was a little over 2 hours,
Yes, sir.
you raised your hand and they put you under oath, right?
Yes, sir.
And throughout the proffer, the agents, particularly Special Agent Sanford, kept on telling you that you have to tell the truth, right?
Yes, sir.
He didn't believe you.
I mean, whatever his reasons are.
Was he
I know.
frustrated with you during the interview?
Yes, sir.
In fact, 1 hour and 8 minutes into the proffer, he said to you that you were minimizing your involvement.
Hold on. What is the objection?
Hearsay, Your Honor.
Please approach. Examination.
So let's go back. Your position, what you've told this jury, is you are completely consistent. You told the same story during the entire proffer, right?
I can't, like I told you, I can't remember verbatim what I've said from the first proffer and the second proffer.
Let's just talk about the first proffer.
Yes, sir.
Your view is that from the beginning of the first proffer to the end of the first proffer, you said the same thing throughout. That's what you're telling this jury.
From the first proffer to the second proffer, that I'm saying the same exact thing. I don't remember verbatim what I've said.
How about from the beginning of the first proffer to the end of the first proffer? What you told the jury is you were consistent from the beginning of the first proffer to the end of the first proffer. Do you recall saying that?
Yes, sir.
Is that still your testimony?
No, I was consistent about it? No, because it was very hard for me to confess what I've done.
So let me ask the question again.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that during the first proffer, for the first 1 hour and 8 minutes, you continued to say that you didn't murder Professor Markel?
No, sir, I didn't say that.
I don't understand your answer. So let me rephrase.
Okay.
Isn't it true that for the first half of the first proffer, you denied participation in the murder of Professor Markel?
No, sir, I was telling what happened and how my involvement in it.
So your position is that
Yes,
throughout the entire first proffer, you admitted that you participated in the murder of Professor Markel.
Yes, sir.
Judge, may I proceed now?
You may.
Would it surprise you that 1 hour and 8 minutes into the first proffer, Special Agent Sanford said that you were minimizing your involvement in Professor Markel's murder?
Like he stated, I was minimizing it. It was hard for me to confess everything that I've suppressed for the past 7 years.
11 minutes later, he said that what you were telling him made absolutely no sense. Do you recall him saying that?
No, sir, I did not.
Well, let me see if I can show you. Does this refresh your recollection that Special Agent Sanford said all of it doesn't make sense? I'll withdraw it.
Please allow her to.
Does this refresh your recollection of what Agent Sanford said?
Just the line that you highlighted?
You can read before and after to make sure I'm not doing lawyer tricks.
Yes, sir. Can I?
Of course.
Please do yourself now.
Yes, sir. Yes, Agent Sanford is saying that why am I not remember conversations, specific conversations, and I told him I can't recall those specific conversations.
Was he telling you that what you were saying didn't make sense to him?
I'm going to object to what Agent Sanford said or his opinions.
Sustain, please lay the foundation to impeach specifically.
At some point in the interview, did he walk out on you?
Yes, he did on the second interview.
Yeah, okay. We're going to get to that. That's like 4 hours into your combined interviews, right?
I believe so.
Right? So you come back and I think it's over an hour into the second interview, so actually my math isn't great. It's like 3.5 hours into interviewing. Agent Sanford gets so upset.
Judge, I'm going to object to Agent Sanford's opinions
I'll
or
rephrase.
actions or words.
He's withdrawing the question. Please move on.
Around 3 hours into these interviews, Agent Sanford decides to leave the room, right?
Yes, sir.
He was frustrated with you, right?
I believe so.
Truthfully, during your first interview, you kept on saying all of these things were jumbled in your head, right?
Yes, sir.
You said that about 11 times. Do you recall that?
I don't recall how many times I said it. No, sir.
You said that eventually, 33 minutes into the interview, you said you arranged through an envelope that Charlie gave you, but that you never opened it for Sigfredo to rough up Professor Markel. Do you recall saying that?
Repeat the question?
33 minutes into the interview,
Yes, sir.
you admitted that you arranged through an envelope that Charlie gave you, but that you never opened,
Yes, sir.
for Sigfredo to rough up Professor Markel. Do you recall that?
I've never said Professor Markel's name.
To rough up the deceased.
What do you mean by that? Can you explain?
You told them 33 minutes into the interview
Yes.
that Charlie had given you an envelope that you had never opened, that miraculously got to Sigfredo Garcia, and the purpose of it was to rough up his ex-brother-in-law.
No, because I didn't know what the contents of what was in the envelope, so I wouldn't have said that.
You said that somehow that plan had transitioned to murder, but according to what you told investigators, you never knew when that happened. Do you recall saying that?
Repeat the question again, sir.
You said that somehow the rough-up plan had transitioned to murder.
I never said rough up or any of those words. That's why it's confusing me what
All right,
you're stating.
let's say it again.
Yes, sir.
You said that somehow the plan had transitioned to murder. But according to what you told investigators, you never knew when that transition happened.
Well, at that time, I didn't know.
At the time that you were interviewed?
No, not at my interview, but when it was happening, as they're interviewing me and we're going through the scenario.
I'm going to show you 186 to 187. You know what, I'll just move on. You told investigators during your first interview, 2 hours into it, 2 hours and 1 minute to be exact,
Yes, sir.
that you never spoke to Charlie about the change in plans,
I never spoke to Charlie about the change in plans.
meaning it going to become a murder.
I'm confused about the questions you're asking. Is this what I said?
Yes, what you said to these investigators just a year ago after you were convicted for life, didn't you tell investigators you didn't know it was going to be a murder?
When we were talking about this, like I said, it was hard for me to confess my involvement in this.
Right, so
Can you show me where I said this?
let's just go with what you just said.
Yes, sir.
So 2 hours into your first interview, when you said this, you still were not admitting that you had a part in the murder.
Yes, it was very hard for me to do this, especially that they came to me in prison where,
Right.
Why are all these investigators coming in?
Okay, so we are now where we started, which is during this first proffer, just a year ago, under oath again, you refused to admit at first that you had anything to do with the murder, that you were a part of the murder.
Yes,
think
sir.
that's-
Yes.
Okay,
It's hard for me to admit it. Yes, sir, it is. It's still hard for me to admit it right now.
okay. During your first proffer, 9 minutes and 14 seconds into it, do you recall being asked the following questions? And as you saw in trial, Garcia and Rivera made a trip in June. What can you tell us about that? Answer. See, like I don't even remember. I mean, obviously, like you're telling me to, like, remember from what I heard at trial. I learned a lot of things from trial. That's why it's so hard. And I want to say the right thing, but like, I don't remember them going up on a first trip. Do you recall saying that during this proffer?
I don't recall it. If you could show it to me.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Does that refresh your recollection that you said that?
Yes, sir.
You were asked during your proffer on page 68, I don't know how long into it, probably about a third into it. Question, before that trip, you knew that Lewis was going to go with him on that trip. Answer, no, I never knew he was going with him. Do you recall answering that way?
Yes, sir.
You also said during that proffer, 63 minutes in, that you didn't know Luis Rivera was going on the second trip to Tallahassee. Do you recall saying that?
Yes, sir.
During that interview on page 83, you told investigators, this is just a year ago, that on the night of July 18th, you didn't know that Charlie's brother-in-law had been shot.
Can you show me that, sir?
Sure.
Yes, because I'm emphasizing I don't know Dan Markel.
You said that you didn't know that Dan Markel had been shot, right?
Yes, sir.
You told that to investigators a year ago, that that's what, on that night, you had no idea that there was a shooting.
Yes, I was partly denying probably still my involvement in it. This is something I've suppressed for a long time, sir.
Now, what's also interesting is when you described July 18th, you said Charlie was panicked.
Yes, sir.
You said he took his Xanax and you took his Xanax.
Yes, sir. He gave me.
You said that he was upset.
I never said he was upset. He was just frantic.
Let's move on to the second proffer.
Yes, sir.
The second proffer was 6 weeks after the first proffer. Do you recall that?
This is when I came back. I came here.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
And you met with investigators for 3.5 hours this time,
If that's what it states.
from 10:06 in the morning to 1:38 in the afternoon.
Yes, sir.
At the beginning of the interview, you told investigators you didn't know why you were there, right?
Yes, I didn't know what I got pulled out for.
And 15 minutes into the interview, Agent Sanford left the room, right?
Yes, sir.
And he didn't come back.
No, sir.
During the interview, you were told, do you recall being told that you weren't giving the state anything to make them want to do anything for you?
Repeat that question, sir.
Do you recall that during the interview, you were told that you weren't giving the state anything to make them want to do anything for you?
Who stated that?
Investigator Bennett.
Okay, yes, sir.
She was upset.
I mean, we were just talking about the same thing over again.
When she said that you had a real issue, right?
Not that I can recall. What's the issue?
Well, if you didn't help the state and give them something that they could work with, there was only one way you were ever getting out of prison, and that's in a box.
Why do you keep stating that, sir?
You're in jail for the rest of your life, right?
Yes, sir.
If the state doesn't help you, the only way you're getting out of prison is when you die.
But they never said they were going to help me. I wasn't promised
That's not my
anything.
question. What's the only way that you're getting out of prison if the state doesn't help you?
I'll die in prison.
During this second proffer, they asked you, you mean to tell me that you had no clue that he came to Tallahassee? Answer, he never told me he was going to Tallahassee. Do you recall saying that you didn't know that Sigfredo Garcia was going to Tallahassee?
Yes, sir. I never knew he went to Tallahassee.
You never knew Sigfredo Garcia went to Tallahassee?
No, sir.
Okay. During these proffers, you never told the state about monthly payments, did you?
Monthly payments.
That Charlie was making monthly payments to you.
What, the checks from the Adelson Institute?
Yes.
They were aware of that.
How about the cash he was giving you every month?
He wasn't giving me any cash every month.
Oh, really?
Yes.
He wasn't giving you $2,000 of cash every single month that you're heard on the wires trying to accept?
No, sir.
He was just giving you an Adelson Institute check?
Yes, sir. What would the $2,000 be for?
Before he gave you the Adelson Institute checks, you were getting $3,000 a month, right?
No, sir.
It wasn't until 1 hour and 13 minutes in the first proffer that you first admitted that you didn't work for the Adelson Institute, right?
Yes, sir. I lied about it.
In the proffer.
In the proffer, I don't know when I said it, but I lied in my trials about getting those checks from the Adelson Institute. Because I said those were checks that I needed to show so that I can get insurance for my children.
You recall them asking you about a meeting with Charlie in the car before Dolce Vita?
Yes, sir.
And you said that you couldn't recall what was discussed?
Yes, sir.
You recall that during the second proffer, you told the state that you didn't know the police were at your door during the wire? And if you had known they were at the door, you would have let them in?
I don't think I mentioned it in that way, but they didn't announce themselves when they were knocking on the door.
In fact, aren't we going to see in the wires that you were hiding from the police?
I was not hiding. I was at home.
Weren't you hiding at home?
From what? I was working from home that day.
Weren't you making a bunch of phone calls to a lot of people saying, the police are at my door, I don't know what to do, I can't answer the door, I'm afraid? Weren't you hiding from them?
Somebody was knocking at the door. They didn't state who they were, so I was calling Sigfredo, and nobody was picking up. Then one of his coworkers finally called back and said that there's FBI over there speaking to him, and he's gonna come by the house.
And he came by the house.
Yes.
And you all discussed how you were going to stay hidden and not answer the door, right?
I didn't discuss anything. They just said that there was like an FBI agent or an agent outside. So
and
I just
you
never
decided
answered.
not to answer the door and let them in, right?
No, why would I let them in?
Let me make sure that we're being clear here.
Yes, sir.
Did you know that the police were outside your door?
I didn't know who was outside my door. I didn't know until his coworker had stated that there was an undercover or an agent outside.
And after he stated that, did you know that there was police outside your door?
They were gone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like they knocked
Okay.
and then they were gone.
You didn't stay hidden for over 45 minutes
No,
while
sir.
these phone calls are happening?
I was at home. I just didn't open the door.
Okay. During the entire first proffer and 2/3 of the second proffer, you never said that Charlie did it or ordered it. Isn't that true?
Not specifically, no.
Now today you come in here and you talk about how on Halloween Charlie asked you if there was someone who could hurt his ex-brother-in-law, right?
I stated that on the proffer.
That's fine.
Yes, sir.
It took you a while to state it in the proffer, but I admit you did. It took
Yes,
you
sir.
about an hour and 40 minutes. But today, that's what your testimony was, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you know that you had only started dating Charlie Adelson about 2 weeks before Halloween?
Probably. We just started talking. I don't know specifically if it was 2 weeks.
Do you know that at the time of Halloween 2013, Charlie Adelson had absolutely no idea anything about your ex?
I wouldn't know, sir.
Well, let me see if I can refresh your memory. Do you recall text messages in November 27th of 2013 where you said to...
And
Okay.
please show the witness the document.
But let me ask some questions first.
Go ahead.
Isn't it true that Charlie Adelson didn't know about your ex until November 27th, 2013?
I wouldn't know, sir.
And even then, he didn't know much about him?
I wouldn't know.
Let me approach with,
You may.
what number is it? Defense Exhibit 34. You have it, text messages.
What am I looking at, sir?
These text messages between you and Charlie Adelson. Does that refresh your recollection that he didn't know about your ex until at the earliest, November 27th, 2013?
Yes, sir.
Halloween's in October, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, You talk about this letter and Charlie printing it up. In all the times in Charlie's house, you ever see him, does he have a computer? He doesn't own a computer, right?
He had a little office in his house, but I don't know if there was a computer or not. I don't recall.
Do you recall during these interviews that the investigators kept on pushing you whether Charlie gave you money during the trips?
Repeat the question, sir.
Do you recall during these interviews that the investigators kept on pushing you, asking you a lot of questions about whether Charlie Adelson gave you any money before the two men took the trips?
Yes, and I answered them.
I know you did.
Okay.
And it took you 22 minutes left in the second proffer where you finally said he gave you a few $100s before each trip.
Yes, sir.
Repeatedly before then, you couldn't even remember that, right? You were confused as you said it.
No, I could remember it. It was just very hard when I was speaking, especially when I was speaking with Sergeant Sanford in the room because he was frustrated with me. So once he left the room, it was an easier conversation to have, and I wasn't so pressured.
It was an easier conversation to have because, in fact, Investigator Bennett started to play the part of Katie Magbanawa, right?
I don't know what you mean by that,
Well,
sir.
she started to testify for you.
No, sir, she did not.
It wasn't mostly her talking and you saying yes?
No, sir.
Isn't it true that it wasn't until an hour and 16 minutes and 31 seconds into the second proffer where you were still continuing to say that you didn't become aware that this was going to be a murder until sometime between the first and second trips to Tallahassee?
Yes, sir. I told you it was very hard for me to admit my part in all of this. I'm sorry.
So 4 hours into your proffers, you were still saying that you didn't know the first trip was for a murder. That's fair to say, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go on to a little different subject. You started dating Sigfredo Garcia just after high school.
Yes, sir.
By the time you broke up with him, you had been with Sigfredo on and off for more than a decade.
Yes, sir.
By the way, when you dated Charlie Adelson, he thought you were broken up with Sigfredo Garcia, right?
I was broken up with him.
Well, did you have sexual relations with Sigfredo Garcia while dating Charlie Adelson?
Yes, I did.
Charlie didn't know that, right?
I mean, that's not something I would tell him.
Now, you considered him to be your husband.
Yes, sir.
You met Charlie Adelson at work
Yes, sir.
at a place called Sophie Dental.
Sophie Dental.
Sorry, Sophie Dental.
Yes, sir.
And that was in South Beach.
Yes, sir.
And you started dating in the middle of October of 2013.
In the middle of October? No, we started dating before that.
When did you start dating?
I don't recall the exact date, but it was definitely before October.
If I told you
September.
do you recall that your first date was at a restaurant kind of in the building?
I believe so, yes.
If I told you that the date of that was October 9th, would that refresh your recollection? Could
Yes,
that be
sir.
right?
Possibly, yes, sir.
Now, when you dated Charlie Adelson, he treated you well.
Yes, sir.
I think you said you didn't know he had money. You knew he had money.
I mean, he wasn't very flashy with it. I know he was well off.
He took you to nice dinners.
Yes, sir.
That was different than your past relationship, right?
I've been in nice dinners with Sigfredo.
Did Charlie treat you nicer than Sigfredo?
I wouldn't say that he treated me nicer at that time, yes, because I was going through a lot with Sigfredo.
Did Charlie ever lay hands on you?
No, sir.
Did Sigfredo?
We've gotten into arguments, yes.
One where he ripped off your necklace?
No, he's never ripped off any necklace
No?
of mine. No.
Now, at first, Charlie was the pursuer. Is that fair to say? He pursued you.
Yes, sir.
Over time, you became more serious.
I believe so.
And he made it clear to you over time, namely in the spring of 2014, that he didn't want anything different than casual, right?
I mean, I think we were both in agreement with that, yes.
But you had questions about it. You asked him, right?
I believe so.
And he told you, I like the way things are.
Yes, sir.
Now, Sigfredo came to know that you were dating Charlie, correct?
Yes, sir.
And during your second trial, you testified that you told Sigfredo about Charlie to make Sigfredo mad.
Probably.
You wanted to throw it in his face that you were dating a successful dentist, right?
That I was dating somebody, period, because I never really dated anybody after Sigfredo.
Sigfredo hated Charlie.
I mean, yes.
You told Charlie on one occasion, if you see him, run. Isn't that what you told him?
Not that I can recall now.
Is it possible that you told him that?
No, but he would be scared of Sigfredo, yes.
Sigfredo considered you the love of his life, right?
I believe so.
He made it clear to you that he wanted you back and didn't want you to be with Charlie, right?
It's not that he made it clear, but we were trying to work it out for our family.
Now, Charlie talks a lot, right?
Yes, he does.
And he repeats himself over and over.
Yes, sir.
As a traveling periodontist, he's in the car a lot for work, right?
Yes, sir.
And what does he do when he's in the car a lot? Talks on the phone?
Talk on the phone, yes, sir.
And he'd call you a lot on the phone, right?
He would at that time, yes.
And at that time, he would sometimes call you early in the morning, right?
Yes, sir.
He'd call you sometimes in his breaks at work.
Yes, sir.
He'd call you late at night.
Yes, we were dating.
Exactly. He'd talk to you a ton.
Yes, sir.
He talks to his mom a lot on the phone too, right?
I believe so.
Well, you witnessed it, right?
Yes.
You would be with him a lot when he would talk to his mom, right? On the phone.
Yes, sir.
And by the way, you talk on the phone a lot with Sigfredo Garcia, right?
Yes, sir.
And that makes sense because he's the father of your two children, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, in 2014, you became aware of Charlie's family issues, right?
Yes, sir.
You heard him talking on the phone a lot to his mom, right?
Yeah, he's always talking to his mom.
And also, when you guys would go out, as you know, Charlie likes to talk, right?
Yes, sir.
And so a topic of frequent conversation would be what he had just talked to his mom about, right?
No, he never told me what he was talking to his mom about.
No, so he never told you about the problems that his sister was having? He wouldn't recount those conversations that he was having with his mom?
Not when he's on the phone with his mom. Maybe if we're just, laying down or talking, he'd mention it once in a blue moon.
And you would ask him questions about it, right?
Not really.
He told you about this TV was cheaper than a hitman joke many times, right?
Yes, he's made that comment before.
And he repeated it to many people, right?
Yes, sir, he has.
He makes a lot of bad jokes, right?
Yes, he does.
Did you ever tell him, Charlie, why are you making that joke when we're actually hiring a hitman? Like, don't you think that's a bad idea? Did you ever say that to him?
No, because feels like he's untouchable.
No, because you really weren't hiring a hitman. He didn't know he was hiring a hitman, right? That's why you didn't tell him that, right?
He knew he was hiring a hitman.
So when he made that joke in front of Professor Lacoste on March 11th at Yardbird.
That he made that joke?
Yeah, you know he made the joke at that dinner, right?
I don't recall that. No, sir.
Okay.
Unless I was talking to Wendy and I didn't pay attention to what they were talking about.
Well, let's talk about that dinner a little bit on March 11th, just 6 weeks before the first attempt that in your proffers you didn't know about. You all ate outside on the patio?
Yes, sir.
And during this dinner, you and Wendy talked a lot about your exes, didn't you?
Not that we talked a lot about the exes. I always speak of my children, so I'm pretty sure I mentioned my kids and she mentioned her kids.
You didn't probe information from Wendy about her ex, and while you were that's why you brought up your exes, your ex?
No, sir. We did not talk about any exes.
Were you aware that Sigfredo and Luis Rivera were sitting in a car scoping you out?
I didn't know that until my trial.
Now, the state showed you a picture of you on the beach with Wendy Adelson.
Yes, sir.
No discussion about a murder plot during that.
No.
The jet ski incident, was Charlie scared?
Yes, sir.
Were you upset?
Of course.
Did it cause a whole string of text messages and fights between you and Sigfredo?
After that incident, yes.
You were afraid that Charlie was going to break up with you, right?
Not really.
Really, your text messages don't show that you were upset that Charlie might break up with you? That Sigfredo was trying to run your life?
Well, I was upset, but I didn't really care if Charlie was going to break up with me or not.
Now, I want to take you to the week of the murder. And we'll start with July 14th. You had dinner with Charlie the night of July 14th, right?
Not that I can recall.
Oh, you don't recall having dinner with him the night of July 14th?
No, sir.
Are you sure you didn't have dinner with him the night of July 14th?
I can't recall. If you'd show me something.
Do you recall him working late and coming towards your house and meeting him at a place near the water on July 14th?
No, sir.
Well, let's do it this way. If you had dinner with him on July 14th, just 4 days before the murder,
Yes, sir.
did you pick up money from him at that point in time?
No, sir, because I don't even remember that dinner.
Assuming that the dinner happened,
Yes,
which I
sir.
think the state's going to prove,
Okay.
did you pick up any money from him at that dinner?
No, sir. I don't even recall that dinner.
Fair enough. Do you recall having lunch with him on July 17th, the day before the murder?
No, sir.
Let me try to refresh your memory on this. Do you recall on July 16th that Charlie worked late and went out to dinner with Erica Johnson?
I can't recall.
Do you recall that you got in a fight with him that night because you thought he might be cheating on you?
No, sir, I don't recall it.
Do you recall that there are text messages in which you were upset that he was out so late? You don't recall that?
No, sir. Do you have something to show me?
I don't need to. Do you recall that he told you on that call that he had worked late, that he had gone out with Erica, and that he would have a lunch with you the next day?
I don't recall any of those days, sir.
Do you recall that on the call on that night, the evening of the 16th, it's actually the very morning of the 17th, it's after midnight, that you were adamant that you wanted to have dinner with him on the 18th?
No, sir. I
You don't
don't
remember
recall
that?
any of those days. That's why I'm
You don't
asking if
remember that,
can
it's fine.
Show me.
The answer is you don't remember that, right?
No, I can't recall.
I get to ask the questions,
Yes, sir.
okay?
Yes.
That's how this works.
Yes, sir.
Now, you went to lunch with him near his house. Do you recall that?
No, sir.
One moment.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall going to Vila's? It's like a Cuban-Mexican place right by Charlie's house.
I know of the restaurant, but I don't remember the date when we went. Or, we've eaten there before, yes?
You don't recall going there the day before the murder?
No, sir.
Nonetheless, if you had been there, you didn't collect any money that day, right?
No, sir.
Do you recall that during that lunch, you got in a big fight?
During what lunch?
The lunch on the 17th that you don't remember.
How can I tell you what happened if I don't remember the date and you're not showing me anything?
Let's talk about after the murder. One moment, Your Honor.
Take your time.
Isn't it true that Charlie Adelson gave you $138,000 the night of the murder, not $100,000?
I never counted the money.
Isn't it true that you were paid $3,000 every month after the murder?
No, sir.
Isn't it true that you told Charlie Adelson that a terrible thing had happened, your friend got an idea to do this, you didn't know anything about it, but you would help him?
Repeat that question, sir.
Isn't it true that you told Charlie Adelson that a friend of yours had done this, that you had talked
No,
too
sir.
much, but that you would do everything you could to help Charlie Adelson?
No, sir.
Isn't it true that you told him that if he ever went to the police, these people would do to him and his family what they had done to Professor Markel?
No, sir.
If the state proves that for the next 20 months you received payments, does the state have it wrong?
That I received payments?
For the
For me
next
to-
20 months after July 18th, if the state proves, they're going to bring up a financial person who's
Yes.
going to show cash payments. When the state proves that,
Yes,
do
sir.
they have it wrong?
No, because I deposited throughout every month.
The payments that Charlie were making to you.
No, what Sigfredo had given to me.
Is it true that you were the mastermind behind Professor Markel's murder?
No, sir. That was Charlie.
I'm sure it was.
I didn't have any information on Mr. Markel.
Like Panama, do not volunteer information.
Yes.
Wait for a question, respond accordingly to the question.
I'm
But-
sorry, Your Honor.
By the way, on these wires that we're going to hear, you're repeatedly lying to Charlie, right?
Repeatedly lying about what?
Well, you're telling him that you're calling the undercover number, right?
Yes, I lied to
You
him.
never called the undercover number.
No, because I was telling Sigfredo to call that number.
Ma'am, let me ask the questions.
I'm answering.
I know you have an agenda, but let me ask the questions.
Objection, move to strike, argument ended.
Sustained.
Members of the jury are to disregard the last comment about any agendas. Please continue.
On those wires, you tell Charlie Adelson that you've called the undercover number, don't you?
Yes, I said that.
And you never called the undercover number.
Of course, why would I call it?
You tell Charlie Adelson that you tried to call the number, but it's a non-working number. Do you recall saying that?
I believe so, yes.
And that was a lie.
Yes, we were all lying to each other.
You call, Judge,
He was responding to your question. You don't have to like the answer.
I actually love it. You never lied to Sigfredo on those wires, did you?
Yes, I did.
When did you lie to Sigfredo on those wires?
Well, he was lying to me, actually.
I asked a different question. When did you lie to Sigfredo on those wires?
No.
Give me one example of lying to Sigfredo.
You're right. I'm stating that Sigfredo was lying to me.
Miss Magbanua, I'm going to ask the question one more time.
No, I didn't lie to Sigfredo.
You never once lied to Sigfredo Garcia on those wires.
Not that I can recall, no.
But you repeatedly lied to Charlie Adelson on those wires, didn't you?
Yes, sir, I did.
By the way, you and Sigfredo Garcia talked about how you needed to get a burner phone, right?
No, Sigfredo was the one who got the burner phones.
Okay. You and Sigfredo got burner phones, right?
Sigfredo bought the burner phones, yes.
And you used a burner phone, right?
Yes, he advised me to do so.
Did you ever talk to Charlie Adelson about getting a burner phone?
I wasn't aware, but I thought he had one.
You told Charlie Adelson that Sigfredo Garcia left a voicemail for the undercover. You recall telling him that?
I believe so, yes.
That was a lie, right?
I believe Sigfredo did leave a voicemail to the undercover.
You think he did, or you think they just heard about the voicemail, that he actually never called the undercover?
If he said he did, he probably did.
Now, shortly after the murder, you and Charlie break up, right?
Yes, sir.
Like immediately after.
I don't know if it's immediately after, but we stopped, hanging out as much.
Now, you keep on saying that the state hasn't promised you anything, right?
Yes, sir.
But you're hoping that they're going to help you, right?
Of course, I want to see my children again.
Redirect examination.
I'm going to approach you with the text message exhibit that the defense showed you. Maybe I misunderstood, but is this text showing that the defendant found out about Sigfredo in November, or that Sigfredo found out about the defendant in November?
From the text messages, it's that Sigfredo found out about Charlie.
All right. The job in this case, there's some question about, is it to harm, is it to rough up, is it to kill? What was the job?
It was to kill.
And you knew it was to kill?
Those exact words weren't mentioned, but
Did you
yes.
know that this was going to result in a death,
Yes, ma'am.
not a roughing up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I know you don't, do you know precisely when you found out it was going to be a death?
No, ma'am.
But can you tell this jury it was definitely before the murder?
Before July.
And did Charlie Adelson know it was a murder?
Yes, ma'am. He did.
Did Sigfredo Garcia know it was a murder?
Yes, ma'am. He did.
No further questions.
You may step down. Will the witness be recalled at any point?
She could be, Judge. I would ask that she remain under the rule.
Very well. Please approach. Break before we call the next witness. The bailiff will escort you into the jury room. We'll take a 5-minute recess. Ma'am, when the jurors come. Left states 127. Everyone but the witness may be seated. Please raise your right hand, ma'am. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I
You may take your seat. Please speak loudly and clearly.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Will you tell us your name and spell it for our court reporter, please?
Glariza, Clariza, Libretto, Lebredo.
And did you work at the Adelson Institute for a number of years?
Yes,
About how many years did you work there?
almost 40 years.
Okay, and was the Adelson Institute sold about 2 years ago to another dental practice?
Yes,
And do you still work at that dental practice
Yes.
that they were sold to?
yes.
All right, where was the Adelson Institute located?
In Tamarack,
Tamarack, about how far is that from Miami?
about 30 miles.
And is the exact address 7737 University Drive in Tamarack?
Yes,
All right. The Adelson Institute's was a dental office, right?
dental office, yes.
Okay. The questions I'm going to ask you about the Adelson Institute are about the years from 2013 to 2016, okay?
Okay.
What was your position at the Adelson Institute during that time?
Dental assistant?
Okay. And did you ever work the front desk?
No,
And do you know Dr. Harvey Adelson?
yes,
And did you know his wife, Donna Adelson?
yes,
Did both of them work there during 2013 to 2016?
yes.
Okay, and what was Dr. Harvey Adelson's job at the Adelson Institute?
He was the dentist.
Okay, and was there another dentist that worked there as well?
Charlie worked there too.
Okay, Charlie Adelson?
Yes, Charlie Adelson.
All right, and what was Donna Adelson's role at the Adelson Institute?
Donna was our office manager.
Okay, and how long have you known the Adelson family?
40 years, over 40 years.
So ever since you began working there? It was Adelson Institute even back then?
The name changed, but it was always a dental practice.
Okay, and you've known their family for 40 years?
Yes,
All right, in addition to Harvey Adelson, Donna Adelson, and Charlie Adelson, back from 2013 to 2016, I want to ask you about the other people that worked there. What about Erica Johnson? Did she work there during those years?
yes.
And what was her role there?
She was front desk, and she was Charlie's assistant.
Okay. And was there also a hygienist?
Yes,
And was her name Amy?
yes,
Okay. And was that all of the office staff?
yes,
Okay, so Donna Adelson, Harvey Adelson, Charlie Adelson, you, Erica Johnson, and Amy the hygienist.
correct.
Those were the employees of the Adelson Institute during those years?
Yes.
What were the Adelson Institute business hours during that time?
9 to 5, and we had a late night.
Okay, was it 9 to 5 only 3 days a week?
Yes,
Was that Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday were the 9 to 5 hours?
yes.
Was Wednesday the late night hour?
Late night was Wednesday, 11 to 7.
11 to 7, okay. I guess to try to accommodate the people that had a hard time coming during regular business hours.
Right, yes.
All right, and did the doctors routinely see patients on Fridays or on the weekends?
Emergencies only.
Okay, so that wasn't a routine thing for them to
No.
do. And Adelson Institute did not have operating hours on Friday or the weekends, correct?
No.
Now, back during those years, if a patient called Adelson Institute on a Friday or on a weekend, would it be routed to voicemail?
Yes.
And when y'all came in on Monday morning, would somebody check that answering machine to return the calls of patients?
Yes.
Who had access to employee records?
The Adelsons.
Okay, so that's not something you would have access
No.
to?
No.
And when you say the Adelsons, you mean the Adelsons that work
Donna
there?
and Dr. Adelson.
Okay, thank you. Do you remember 2 law enforcement officers coming to Adelson Institute back on June 1st of 2016 at about 11 a.m.?
Yes.
And did they ask you if you were familiar with an employee named Catherine Magbanwa?
Yes.
Who did you, are you familiar with an employee named Catherine, I'm sorry, with a person named Catherine McBanois?
Yes.
Okay, and how do you know Catherine McBanois?
From the office.
Okay, from being a patient at the office or being an employee at the office?
No, a patient.
Patient. And about how many times did you see her there as a patient?
I believe 2 or 3 times.
Okay, did you provide testimony in another proceeding for a co-defendant's case back in May of 2022? Did you provide testimony in another proceeding in a co-defendant's case back in May of 2022?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to show you your prior testimony. I'm looking at page 1226, lines 6 and 7.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's been quite a while. Looking at those lines, when you were asked how many times had she been a patient, did you say once?
I said once that day, yes.
In your 40 years with the Adelson Institute, had you ever seen Catherine McBanois at Adelson Institute as anything other than a patient?
No.
When investigators asked you about Catherine McBanois that day, if you were familiar with her as being an employee there, and you said no, who did you refer them to? Which employee at Adelson Institute? Erica? Okay. And Erica was kind of working front desk at that time?
Yes.
All right. And then from there on, Erica spoke to the investigators?
Yes.
How did you get paid by Adelson Institute?
With checks.
And about how often would you get checks from them?
Every 2 weeks.
Had you ever been paid for weeks of work prior to completing your work there?
Yes.
When that would happen, would it be because the Adelson family was going out of town or going on a vacation for a couple of
Right.
weeks?
They
at
were
a
going
time?
away. They were going on vacation, so we got paid before.
About how often would that happen?
Maybe once or twice a year.
Okay, so just once or twice a year. And when that would happen, how many paychecks would you get at one time?
2.
2. All right. Would you ever get 4, 5, 6 paychecks in a row?
No.
Have you ever been aware of any Adelson Institute employee in the history of your employment there that has worked exclusively by phone or remotely?
No.
Did the Adelson Institute have a cleaning service at that time?
Yes.
And was it a husband and wife team?
Yes.
And have you seen those people before?
Yes.
Okay.
I know who they are. I
You
knew
know-
who they were. Yes.
Was Catherine McBanois part of that team?
No.
Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
No questions, Your Honor.
The witness may step down. Will she be recalled at any point?
No, sir.
Have a good day, ma'am.
They
Please.
call Erica Johnson.
Please raise your right hand, ma'am. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth? You may take your seat. Please speak loudly and clearly.
Good morning. Will you introduce yourself and spell your name for the court reporter, please?
Erica Johnson, ErikaJohnson.
Okay, and did you work at the Adelson Institute for a number of years?
Yes,
For about how long?
about 11 years.
And were you employed there from 2013 to 2016 during those years?
Yes,
And what was your job there at that time?
front desk.
Okay, were you also kind of worked as an assistant to Charlie Adelson and the front desk?
Yes,
What were your tasks at the front desk?
making appointments, collecting payments.
All right. Were you the primary person who did that for Adelson Institute?
Yes,
Did Adelson Institute often deal in cash for their services?
sometimes.
Would sometimes they offer cash discounts for their dental work?
Yes,
Back during the time period of 2013 to 2016, did Clarissa Libredo, Harvey Adelson, Charlie Adelson, Donna Adelson, and Amy the hygienist, were those the other employees of Adelson Institute besides yourself?
yes,
And were the Adelson Institute business hours Monday through Thursday, kind of regular work hours, 9 to 5, and then on Wednesdays would be a late day from 11 to 7?
yes,
And those were the operating hours, Monday through Thursday, of the Adelson Institute?
yes,
So back in 2014 to 2016, if a patient called the office and it was closed, would a voicemail a call, would it go to a voicemail machine?
yes,
And would you be responsible for checking that message when you arrived on Monday morning?
yes,
All right, I want to talk to you about an incident back in on June 1st of 2016 at about 11 a.m. Do you remember two law enforcement officers coming to Adelson Institute?
yes,
And did they ask you about Catherine McBanois?
yes,
Were they asking you whether or not Catherine McBanois worked at Adelson Institute?
yes,
And did they ask you for employee records related to Catherine McBanois?
yes,
Now, did you have access to her employee records there?
no,
Who at the Adelson Institute had access to employee records?
the owners of the business.
So the Adelsons, okay. Meaning Donna, Harvey, or Charlie?
Correct.
When police asked you for the records, did you call Donna Adelson
No,
or Harvey Adelson?
no,
Did you call Charlie Adelson?
yes,
Okay, and when you called Charlie Adelson to let him know that law enforcement was there and what they were asking about, did you step away from them a little bit to the back of the office to make that call?
yes,
Now, at the time, did you know that the call was being recorded?
no,
Have you had an opportunity to listen to that call in prior proceedings and also before court today?
yes,
And was it your and Charlie Adelson's voices in that call?
yes,
From your memory, is it an accurate recording of that conversation that day?
yes,
This time I move States 106, the call that Erica Johnson made to Charlie Adelson, into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
States 106 is admitted.
Permission to publish?
You may.
Hey, what's going on? Hey, the FBI is here asking for records for Katie.
For what?
That she works here.
I would, I wouldn't, give anything.
Yeah, and
I don't know.
the ex, did she work there? I was like, yeah, she works there, but I don't know what you want. Because remember we sent that.
Erica,
Yeah.
do me a favor. I'm not there right now,
Uh-huh.
and I'm in surgery,
Uh-huh.
but it's not my office. It's my dad's office,
Uh-huh.
so I can't give anything out.
Right.
So, I don't have access to it. I don't know where anything is.
Okay.
So you don't have access to anything.
And you
So
don't know I don't know where anything is either.
yeah. So I would do this. I would not. I would not speak to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You can do whatever you want, but I don't. It's my dad's office,
Yeah.
so I don't have access to any of that stuff.
Okay.
So they can talk to my dad, and I'm sure they'll be able to get whatever they want from them.
Okay. Understandable.
So if I had it, listen, you can talk to whoever you want. I shouldn't say don't talk to anybody.
No, I'm gonna do whatever you tell me.
Yeah, no. I'm not. I shouldn't say don't talk to anyone. Talk to whoever on the planet you want to talk to. But it's not my office, and it's not your office.
Right.
So you don't have records to give them, and I don't have records to give them. So I'm sure they'll be able to help them out in any way they can.
Okay. So that's what I'll tell them.
Tell them that it's not. It's not my office. The office was sold back to my dad actually a long time ago. So tell them that you will. So it's actually you're talking to the wrong Dr. Adelson.
Right.
So what you need to do is tell them that you will get in contact. Tell them. It's not your office. You can't give out records.
They said within 20 days of accordance with Florida statutes, provide above cause with reason.
Are they there now, or do they just stand?
They're there, but I'm in the back. They're just waiting for me to come back.
Oh, and they want records?
Yeah.
Do me a favor. I'm gonna call you from a landline on your cell phone. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
We heard you say at the beginning of the call, you're referencing Katie. When you said Katie, were you talking about Catherine McBanois?
Yes.
And how did you know Catherine McBanois?
She was a patient at the office and his girlfriend.
Okay. A patient at Adelson Institute and Charlie Adelson's girlfriend?
Yes.
Had you ever seen Catherine McBanois work at Adelson Institute?
No.
Did Adelson Institute have a cleaning service that came?
Yes.
And was it a husband and wife team that cleaned the office?
Yes.
And was Catherine McBanois part of that husband and wife team?
No.
Were you on yearly salary or paid by the hour at Adelson Institute?
Hourly.
And would you get paid every 2 weeks?
Yes.
At that time, were your checks around $589 every 2 weeks for about 28 hours a week?
Yes.
Would you ever get paid for weeks of work in advance?
Yes.
And when would that occur? What was going on for that to occur?
They would go on vacation.
Okay, and when that would happen, when they would go on vacation, would you sometimes get 2 checks at a time?
Yes.
Would you ever get 4, 5, 6 checks at a time?
Not that I can remember.
Were you aware of any Charlie Adelson's girlfriends being on the payroll at Adelson Institute?
No.
Was Donna Adelson the person that took care of payroll?
Yes.
Had you ever been aware of any employee in the history of Adelson Institute that worked exclusively by phone or remotely?
No.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Very, very briefly. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
At the time of that call, Charlie Adelson didn't own the office, correct?
Correct.
And the reason why you called him is because his parents, Harvey and Donna were out of town, right?
Yes.
The reason why you went to the back of the office when they came is because there were patients in the office, right?
Correct.
And you were nervous about this all going on with patients in the office, right?
Absolutely.
And Charlie, when he called you back, that was his big concern, right? The patients
Yes.
being in the office, right? When he called you back, was there anything crazy that he told you?
Nothing.
Now, there's been talk about this answering machine. It was like an old-fashioned type of answering machine, right?
The other one's a voicemail, yes.
And on the answering machine, Harvey Adelson would give his name and cell phone number for an emergency, right?
Correct.
By the way, Charlie Adelson, he only worked at the Adelson Institute maybe 2 times a month, right?
Yes.
And when he would work there, he'd work mostly with you, right?
Yes.
You liked working with him, right?
Loved.
And you'd work late at night,
Yes.
and sometimes you'd go out to dinner late at night after, right?
Yes.
By the way, you say you loved working with Charlie Adelson. Did you continue to work with him after the allegations in this case?
Yes.
Did you ever worry about working with him?
No.
Sustained. He would disregard the last
Answer to that question. Please move on.
You continued to work with him until he got arrested, correct?
Correct.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect examination.
So at one point, Adelson Institute was sold to Charlie Adelson and then sold back to Harvey Adelson, right?
I think so.
But Charlie Adelson still worked as a dentist there, right?
Yes.
At his family's dental practice.
Yes.
And he also worked as a traveling periodontist, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just a second. Do you remember previously saying that you didn't remember what happened when he called you back on the landline?
I don't remember.
Okay. That's all.
Will Ms. Johnson be recalled at any point, or is she released?
I know she can be released. Thank you.
She can be released, Your Honor.
Have a good day. Members of the jury, we're going to take our lunch break at this point. Once again, I'm going to remind you of the thing that I always do. Do not discuss the case with each other or anyone else. Do not watch any news coverage. Do not seek out any information concerning this matter. We are going to resume with the trial at 1:45. Please report back by 1:30.